What's up, your boy? For another reaction. In today's video, we have movies that were banned for exposing the truth. This some so Illuminati shit by Simple Paint. Make sure to comment, subscribe, and let's get into it. Movies that expose the truth. Let's see.
In 1967, a former law professor named Frederick Wiseman made a documentary inside Bridgewater State Hospital, a Massachusetts institution for mentally ill criminals. Wiseman had taken his law students there on field trips and knew the conditions were bad. He spent a year convincing the hospital to let him bring a camera inside. They eventually agreed, on the condition that staff would follow him at all times. Wiseman spent 29 days filming. Patients were kept naked in empty cells with no light. Guards bullied and mocked them. One scene showed a doctor force-feeding a patient through a tube in his
What the fuck?
nose while cigarette ash dropped into the liquid food. But many of the people locked inside were not even dangerous. One man had been sentenced to 2 years for painting stripes on his horse to make it look like a zebra, hoping to attract
What?
customers to his fruit cart. When Wiseman filmed him, he had been locked up for 28 years. Another man was sent there for a short evaluation in 1910 and was still there in 1967. A study later found that at least 30 inmates had been committed illegally. The documentary was shown at the New York Film Festival, where it received strong praise. But before it could reach the public, the state of Massachusetts went to court to stop it. They said the film violated the patient's privacy and dignity. But Wiseman had gotten permission from the hospital, which was the legal guardian of every patient inside. Bridgewater was run by the state, and the film made them look terrible. A court banned it anyway and ordered all copies destroyed. It became the only film in American history ever banned for reasons other than obscenity or national security. For the next 24 years, only doctors, lawyers, and students were allowed to see it. The ban was finally lifted in 1991. By then, every single patient shown in the film had died. The Battle of Chile. In 1972, a Chilean filmmaker named Patricio Guzman returned home from film school in Spain and found his country in the middle of a political crisis. Salvador Allende, the first socialist president elected in the Americas, was under attack from the military, the wealthy, and the CIA. Guzman put together a crew of 5 people with 1 camera and a borrowed car, and started filming everything he could. Film stock was hard to come by because the US had cut off supplies to Chile, so a French filmmaker named Chris Marker sent him enough rolls to keep shooting. For almost a year, they recorded strikes, protests, speeches, and street clashes. On September 11, 1973, the military launched a coup. The Air Force bombed the presidential palace, and Allende died inside. The new dictator, Augusto Pinochet, took power and began rounding up anyone connected to the previous government. Over the next 17 years, his regime would torture more than 40,000 people and kill or disappear more than 3,000. Guzman was detained after the coup, but the footage survived. The crew smuggled 20 hours of film out of the country. They fled separately and regrouped in
And Chile beautiful too. Chile got some beautiful houses.
Cuba, where they spent years editing it into a 3-part documentary. Not everyone made it out. The cameraman, Jorge Miller Silva, was arrested by Pinochet's secret police in November 1974. He was tortured and never seen again. The film is dedicated
Damn, killed that boy.
to him. The Battle of Chile was banned in its own country for the entire length of the dictatorship. It was part of a blacklist of over 1,000 films the regime did not want its people to see. In 1997, after democracy had returned, Guzman went back to Chile and screened the film for young people who had grown up under Pinochet. Their parents had been too afraid to tell them what really happened in 1973, so most of them were seeing their own country's history for the first time. Many of them broke down in tears. The Seed of the Sacred Fig. In 2022, a young woman named Mahsa Amini was arrested in Tehran for not wearing her headscarf properly. She died in police custody, and her death set off the biggest protests Iran had seen in years. The government responded with force, arresting thousands and killing hundreds. An Iranian director named Mohammad Rasulov decided to
Gang, that's what y'all gonna do? Cause the niggas trying to protest, gang? You gonna start killing the protesters, gang?
make a film about it. The story
You gotta be blessed so you don't live in fucking Iran and one of these countries, gang. Like,
follows a judge in Tehran's revolutionary court, whose family starts to fall apart as the protests sweep through the country. His daughters side with the protesters, his gun goes missing, and his trust in his own family breaks down. Rasulov used real footage of the protests alongside the fictional story, showing what was actually happening in the streets. Rasulov had already been arrested multiple times since 2010 for his earlier films, and his passport had been taken away in 2017. So he shot the entire film in secret over about 70 days without government permission. Midway through filming, he learned that the court had sentenced him to 8 years in prison, flogging, and the taking of his property for speaking out against the government. A few days after he finished shooting, the sentence became final. There was no way to fight it. Rasulov decided to run. Using escape routes he had learned from people he met in prison, he left Iran on foot. It took him 28 days to cross the mountains into safety. He made it to Germany, and from there to the Cannes Film Festival. When he walked the red carpet, he pulled photographs from his jacket and held them up. They were pictures of 2 of his lead actors who had been banned from leaving Iran. The audience gave the film a standing ovation that lasted 15 minutes. The Iranian government has since been pressuring the cast and crew who stayed behind, trying to make examples of them, so no other filmmaker tries the same thing. The film has never been shown in Iran. The Act of Killing. In 2003, an American filmmaker named Joshua Oppenheimer went to Indonesia to make a documentary about a massacre. Between 1965 and 1966, the military had killed an estimated 1 million people. The targets were accused communists, union members, intellectuals, and ethnic Chinese. The men who did the killing were never punished. Many stayed in power for decades, and for nearly 50 years the government treated the massacre as an act of heroism. Survivors told Oppenheimer he should talk to the men who did it. The killers were not hiding. They bragged about what they had done on television and in public. Because they were so open about it, Oppenheimer realized he could get them to go further. He asked them to reenact their killings on camera, in whatever style they wanted. They chose gangster films and musicals. One man dressed up like a cowboy, while another wore a gown and danced. The result was The Act of Killing, a documentary where genocide is performed by the people who committed it. It showed death squad leaders strangling victims with wire, laughing about widespread abuse and violence, and explaining how they came up with faster ways to kill. The Indonesian co-director could not use his real name. Of the entire crew, 49 Indonesians are listed in the credits only as anonymous, because they were afraid of what would happen if they were identified. The film was never submitted to Indonesia's censorship board. Oppenheimer knew it would be banned, and that banning it would make it a crime for any Indonesian to watch it. Instead, it was spread through over 500 secret screenings in more than 90 cities. After the screenings, Indonesia's biggest news magazine sent 47 journalists across the country to interview the killers and published a 75-page special issue on the massacres. It sold out and was reprinted.
What the fuck happened to the killers? Like the fuck? Well, it was in power, so.
Times. The killers who once bragged in public stopped after the film came out. Oppenheimer has received death threats and cannot safely return to Indonesia. The Battle of Algiers. In 1966, an Italian director
The damn killer is still alive? Like, what the fuck?
named Gillo Pontecorvo made a film about the Algerian War for Independence. Between 1954 and 1962, Algeria fought to break free from French colonial rule, and the conflict left hundreds
I know about this.
of thousands dead. Pontecorvo had fought fascism as a resistance fighter during World War II and saw the same patterns repeating in Algeria. The film was co-produced by a former leader of the Algerian resistance who had lived through the events it depicted. He even appeared in the film, playing a character based on himself. It was shot on the actual streets of Algiers where the fighting had taken place. The film showed Algerian fighters planting bombs in cafes and attacking civilians, but it also showed French soldiers torturing prisoners, killing suspects, and using brutal methods to crush the resistance. It looked so real that it opened with a message telling viewers none of the footage was from actual events. It won the top prize at the Venice Film Festival and was nominated for 3 Academy Awards. Groups like the Black Panthers in USA and the IRA in Ireland studied it as a guide for resistance. But in France, it was a different story. When cinemas tried to show it, veterans and far-right groups threatened them. These were men who had served in Algeria and did not want the public to see what the military had done there. One theater in Paris that tried to screen it in 1971 had its windows smashed at every showing until the owner gave up. For nearly 40 years, the film was almost impossible to see in France. It did not air on French television until 2004. In 2003, the Pentagon organized a screening of the same film for about 40 military officers and policy experts. The United States was facing a growing resistance in Iraq and wanted to understand what France went through in Algeria. The flyer for the event read, "How to win a battle against terrorism and lose the war of ideas." The Blue Kite. In 1993, a Chinese director named Tian Zhuangzhuang made a film about what happened to ordinary families during the political campaigns that tore China apart in the 1950s and 1960s. Tian had grown up during those years himself. The story follows a boy named Tia Tu growing up in Beijing. His father is sent to a labor camp for saying the wrong thing at a political meeting and dies there when a tree falls on him. His mother remarries twice, and both times the government takes her husband away. The film is split into 3 parts, each one tied to a different political movement under Mao. The 100 Flowers campaign, where people were encouraged to speak freely and then punished for what they said. The Great Leap Forward, which led to mass starvation. And the Cultural Revolution, where neighbors turned on each other and children were taught to destroy everything their parents believed in. These things happened to millions of Chinese families, and most of them had never been shown on screen before. Tian later said the stories in the film were real, and that a fear of reality was exactly what led to them being banned. Tian made the film at a state-owned studio in Beijing, and the script had been approved in advance by the government's film bureau. But when officials saw the finished film, they decided it had gone too far. The studio refused to let him finish editing it inside China. So Tian smuggled the negatives out of the country to Japan, where he finished the film and sold the rights abroad. The Chinese government immediately banned the film and prevented Tian from directing anything for 10 years. Officials who reviewed it said it had a problem with its political leanings. The Blue Kite won the Grand Prix at the Tokyo International Film Festival. China withdrew from the festival in protest. Over 30 years later, the film has still never been released in China. La Sombra del Caudillo. In 1960, a Mexican director named Julio Bracho made a movie about one of the darkest chapters in Mexican history. In 1927, General Francisco Serrano ran for president against the wishes of the men who controlled the country. He was kidnapped on a highway and shot along with his supporters. The killings were carried out by the military, and everyone knew it, but no one was allowed to talk about it. A novelist wrote a book about it in 1929, changing the names but keeping the story so close to reality that the book was banned. Bracho had wanted to turn it into a film since 1936, but no government would approve it. That changed in 1959 when a new president, Adolfo López Mateos, took office. He supported the project and even let Bracho film inside some of the most important government buildings in the country. The movie was shot in early 1960. It showed how the military and political class used betrayals and murder to hold on to power. It premiered at a film festival in Czechoslovakia, where critics called it the best Mexican movie ever made. Back home, the release was set for 4 cinemas in the capital. But when the military found out what was in the film, they stepped in. The same institution behind the real killings was now trying to hide the movie about those killings. Officers sent a letter to the interior minister saying the film showed the revolution in a negative and immoral way.
Gang, fuck you mean it showed it in a negative? That's what really happened, gang. Y'all killed them niggas. Like,
Day before opening night, the order came to pull everything, but that wasn't enough. Federal troops entered the Churubusco studios and took the original film negative. It was never seen again. Bracho spent the rest of his life going to 4 different presidents trying to get his movie released. All 4 refused. He died in 1978
damn.
without seeing his film shown in his own country. It was finally released in 1990, 30 years later, but only
They edited that shit, edited the fuck out of it, huh?
from a rough copy because the original had been destroyed. Cry Freedom. In 1987, British director Richard Attenborough made a film about the death of Steve Biko, a black anti-apartheid leader in South Africa. In 1977, Biko was arrested and beaten so badly during questioning that he suffered severe brain damage and died in custody. The government said he died of a hunger strike. A white journalist named Donald Woods investigated and found evidence that the police had killed him. The government banned Woods, making it illegal for him to publish anything or leave the country. He disguised himself as a priest, fled to England, and wrote a book telling the truth about what happened to Biko. Attenborough turned that book into Cry Freedom. His crew tried to shoot in South Africa, but was placed under surveillance by the security police and forced to leave. They filmed in Zimbabwe instead. The movie showed Biko's arrest, the beating, and the cover-up. Denzel Washington played Biko. It was nominated for 3 Academy Awards. At the time of the film's release, Biko's own writings were still banned inside South Africa. South Africa's censorship board approved the film without cuts because they decided it would not be a threat. But once South Africans started watching it, the government changed its mind. The Attorney General told newspapers they would be prosecuted if they printed ads for it, because both Biko and Woods were officially banned persons, and it was illegal to spread their words. Then, a bomb went off outside a Johannesburg theater during a screening. Bomb threats shut down showings in Pretoria and Port Elizabeth. The police commissioner ordered all copies of the film seized. Officers raided theaters at night while the film was still playing, shut down the projectors, and took the reels. The film ends with a long list of anti-apartheid activists who died in South African police custody under suspicious circumstances. Next to each name is the official explanation the government gave for their death. Biko's name is on that list. If you'd like to see more videos like this, make sure to subscribe.
It was a good ass video. Make sure to comment, subscribe, and I'm out. Deuces.